Hey guys, it's Brett from Dragon Lure Gear Talk. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my old mixer that I use primarily for recording drums and kind of share with you a few things I've discovered since I bought this mixer. One of the things I like to kind of think about is, you record with what you have at the moment, and that might not always be ideal, but when you're having ideas, when you're writing music, the gear shouldn't matter as much as just capturing that idea, because it might be a fleeting thing. You might not be able to remember it the next time you sit down to play or write music. And oftentimes it's important just to kind of gather your ideas while you can, in the moment when you're inspired. And maybe you don't have a lot of time, you're going to come back to it, but at least if you've saved that idea, you got it down for posterity. And one of the things I like to do is essentially try to get the best recording I can from the get-go, because oftentimes those first moments of inspiration that's the magic of it. And I might not have the most ideal recording conditions. I'm recording out of my house. I do this on a shoestring budget, and I use gear that might be older and to many people, maybe even obsolete. But there's a lot of ways to collect gear and not spend a lot of money. And I guess that's what this video is about today. So I'm going to show you the mixing board that I'm using at the moment. So this is my EV Electro Voice, BK-1642. I featured this in another couple videos, just kind of in passing when I was discussing how I use my Zoom multi-track. But after thinking about it a little harder about how I use this thing and why, I decided to dedicate a little bit of time for this. And one of the things that I came to realize after buying this is, how do I get sound in and out of this thing? It's essentially a live mixer. Oftentimes live mixers are set up for mono, because when you're in a live venue, let's say you're standing to one side of the stage, you don't only want to hear the guitar player who's standing in front of you. You want to hear the whole band. So oftentimes these mixers, they're set up in a way where they can be used for stereo or mono. And that's a factor in certain mixers that you might choose for recording, because oftentimes we're looking for stereo. That's not to say this can't be used for stereo, but there's features of it that are useful that I think might get passed over just based on the level of outputs you can get out of this thing. Going to maybe your newer interface or some sort of recording device. One of the things I came to realize after having this was that with live mixers, you can get a lot of color, warmth and character out of an older mixer, just because the capacitors they use, the way they're put together. There's certain characteristics to them that can be appealing, and I certainly have enjoyed working with this one just for the EQ in the preamps. One of the issues I had from the get-go is there's not a lot of outputs on it. It's kind of, it's set up for live music, but one of the things I came to realize after doing some research was that you can use an insert to basically turn an insert into an output, because most inserts are using a TRS style cable, which is like this, where there's TRS stands for tip, ring, and sleeve. The signal's going out on one of the rings and returning on another. Well, what you can do is, and not a lot of people maybe realize this, you can take your regular 1/4-inch jack and just plug it in to the very first click. Now it's an output. So I can run my mic in, I can use the preamp on this, and depending on how I'm using it, if I'm just using it for the preamp, I can run this as an output to my interface or my digital recorder or whatever media format you're using, if you're using tape. That's one of the ways to get sound out of these on an individual track basis. The other, obviously, is to use, busing or things like that, or the actual stereo outputs on the mixer. But that's an option that I don't know that everyone is aware of, and it's very handy. It's not intuitive. It's not something that I just kind of stumbled upon. It's something I found after reading for a while. So that's a handy thing. If you're just looking to use some preamps and you're looking to kind of come in, use the preamps, and depending on the mixer, possibly the EQ, it doesn't always work for EQ on every mixer. The other option, which I've discovered works quite well, is a lot of mixers have an aux um, option available, and those auxes can be used for monitoring, for live sound, sending the signal to the speakers through an amplifier to speakers on stage, and this is how they set up the individual levels to those speakers for the performers on stage. Well, you can use those as sort of a bus, which is what I do with my kicks and snare tracks. I described that in another video recently. But that kind of takes the place of having a bus. If you don't have uh, a lot of bus outputs on your mixer, that's also an option for getting sound out, because I've got auxiliary outs that go out the back of this, so I can mix multiple tracks together, send them out in one cable, essentially mono in that case. But when I'm using it for, let's say, a kick drum, where I've got three different mics going, that's become a pretty handy thing. And it's not something that I realized. I'm the type of person that maybe, I get an opportunity to buy some equipment and I want to try it out. I bought this not knowing exactly how I was going to use it, but that's one of the things that I kind of figured out as I went, that this can be a pretty handy tool for mixing and miking more mics than I have tracks available on my interface. So I can mix down multiple tracks on this to a single track on my interface, and that's very helpful for adding some additional mics to the recording and getting a better quality recording out of it. So those are my main two hacks with an old mixer like this, is essentially the using the input as an output. That can be handy with old mixers that don't have the outputs that you may need. And also just knowing that you can use the auxiliary outs, which might be used for monitoring or sending to effects. In most cases, those can be used like a bus as well. So you pick up some older mixers. I have another Mackie mixer that has 6 aux outs, and I mostly use that in my upstairs recording area. But I have brought that mixer down and used it on drums too. I just sort of learned I prefer this older mixer for the drums. It just adds a little bit of warmth and some character to it. And they're big and heavy to lug around. There's plenty of other mixers out there that you can find used for cheap. And if you don't have a huge channel count, maybe on your interface, your whatever recording device you're using, a small, cheap, used, maybe old mixer might be the answer you're looking for, just to kind of keep ideas moving. You do the best you can with the equipment you have, and this is not a fancy recording studio. This is my basement, so I just do the best I can, and I have fun doing it. And so appreciate you watching the video. Let me know if you have any questions. Please feel free to hit like and subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, I will make more. There's plenty of old gear to talk about. Thanks.